And we are back. Okay, we're going to talk about the diversity statement. Okay, so first off, remember the rule I gave you in the last video. If it's an optional essay and you're not going to write something good, then nothing is better than something bad. So, first off, you should not write this essay unless you are pretty sure that it is going to be a banger. And that is unlikely. I would encourage you, if you really think you got a good one, to email me because it is, I would say, less than 10% of the diversity statements I've ever seen are good. Less than 10%. Most of them are bad. Okay. Now, let's talk about what they are looking for in this statement and potentially how to do it. But again, my advice is don't do it. Okay. Um so the idea is that I'm trying to think of how to say this. You know what? I got the perfect introduction. A few years ago, people were shocked. There was a dude who murdered one of his college professors, murdered his college professor, went to jail, came out, and applied to Tulane Law School and got accepted. And people were like, yo, y'all are like rejecting people for having like too many DUIs, but you're letting in a convicted felon, a convicted murderer. What is this? But in my mind, it made perfect sense because law schools love having someone in the classroom who like has a totally different perspective than everyone else. And like if you're in a crim law class, who could have a better perspective than someone who has been on trial for murder? So that's actually what they're talking about when they're talking about diversity. They're talking about having a unique perspective that other people haven't had. Now, that's a little bit different than diversity as we generally use it in a mainstream context. In a mainstream context, just to give a simple example, we consider people of color to be diverse. And we sometimes consider women to be diverse. So if you are a woman of color in a mainstream context, that is automatically diverse. But in terms of a law school diversity statement, that is not necessarily diverse unless that background has caused you to what is the word I'm looking for? Like approach things and view things differently than other people. Um, and then there's a separate question of can you even write about that? So sometimes I have clients who like, yeah, to be honest, they do like their background has really shaped who they are. They know it, I know it, like it's obvious, but they still can't put it into words. And if you can't put it into words, you don't want to put it into words. Um, so the general format for a diversity statement and what you're shooting for is somewhere between 1 and 2 pages. 1 page is fine, 2 pages is fine, somewhere in between that is fine, double spaced. Is this is sort of like this is what made me diverse and like these are this is the stuff in my background that makes me diverse and um that's the first part and then the second part is like well let me actually start over on that. The first part is like this is what's in my background that's maybe a little bit unusual and then the second part is this is how it has affected who I am and this is how it sort of connects to who I am today. um and so we'll just talk about some of this stuff like I'm trying to think of how to say this. Oh, and again, I want to be clear. Most people cannot write a good diversity statement, but usually, when you are writing a good diversity statement, where it comes from is really having, for lack of a better term, some unusual shit in your background. And usually, in my experience, being a person of color is not enough because it really, like, for just to give a simple example so you can understand this, you could say, like, look, I'm black, so I feel like the fact that black people are treated in a very messed up way by our criminal justice system, that motivates me. And I want to come in and make a difference. And I want to make reforms in the system so that black people are not treated poorly by the system. That sounds like pretty good, right? The problem is there's a lot of white people who feel that way right now. That is like, for better or for worse, that is no longer an unusual position in any way. It is not unusual anymore to be like, man, criminal justice is kind of messed up and racist. So my point is, if that's going to be your argument, that's not the best argument. I'll just give you a couple of examples of ones that were good. Someone who had military service, someone like obviously military service, like that can have a big, like this person saw combat, this person like had experiences with violence that I think most people going to law school have not. Another good one, uh I had someone who I called them like a super Christian. What do I mean by that? Like there's like being Christian and believing in Jesus, and then there's like literally everything you do all day is trying to emulate Jesus. You don't really have fun. You basically are just constantly in work mode trying to save people because you love Jesus that much. That I thought that one had a lot of potential because most people are not Christian to that extent. Um, I had one that was about being raised by a single dad. But I've also had other people who were raised by single dads who couldn't write about it. So again, it's sort of like, can you really tell the story of how this has shaped who you are? That's really the thing. And if you can't, that's fine. Don't do it. Um, so yeah, if you're not sure, if you're confused, if you don't know, if you want to talk about it more, send me an email. Okay. Um, oh, one more thing actually. Do not write about poverty unless you can talk about how poverty affected who you are. And the reason I say that is there is a notion in our society that anyone who grows up poor and then makes something of themselves has overcome poverty, but that's not necessarily and automatically true. So I'm just going to give you an example so you can understand this. So let's imagine one person is in poverty, and what that means is that they live with their one parent who works 80 hours a week to like pay bills, so they have to raise their siblings and they don't have time to do homework because they have to raise their siblings. That's some shit. That is like you are actually overcoming poverty if you can succeed under those circumstances. Now let's compare that with someone who lives with their parent is broke. It's like we don't know whether there's going to be money for rent. We have to move a lot. But the student goes home every day and studies. And honestly, they study as much as someone in an affluent background does because basically their mother is doing the best, or father, whoever, is doing the best that they can. But like that doesn't mean that this student like can't study. You see what I'm saying? Like, in other words, it's like in the first scenario, poverty is getting in the way of you accomplishing your goals. If you were poor, but poverty didn't get in the way of that, you don't want to make the argument that you overcame it because that becomes kind of a hard sell. Okay, so that's a bunch of stuff on the diversity statement. We got one left, which is personal statement.